Hi, I'm Joan McKinnon, and even though it's an absolutely gorgeous day out today, it's about 16 degrees, it is about the end of the first week of November, and we all know here in Zone 5 that that means winter could hit us at any time. Last year we had a major snowstorm on Remembrance Day, which is only 5 days from now, so it's time to be thinking about closing our gardens down for the winter and cleaning up our garden tools. Cleaning our garden tools is something that's really rewarding in the spring because so often we get taken over by winter really fast, and we just sort of throw things in a pile somewhere in the garage, or in this case it's in my screened-in porch in the back, and we get them out in the spring and they're just as dirty as they were in the fall, maybe even rusty. So I'm just going to show you some of the things that you should think about when you're getting your garden ready for fall. Some things are easy. I have a couple of different sized trowels here, and they're dirty. I've been digging in bulbs and things. So to start with, I'm simply going to put them in a container of water just to clean them off. So I don't need my gloves for that. These should come off pretty easily. Sometimes when they're dirtier, the dirt's actually caked in here, but these are not bad. They're fairly clean. I'm going to probably just clean up the handles a little bit. I sometimes use a magic eraser for this because it's actually got sandpaper in it and it will take off the surface dirt quite nicely. These are stainless steel. They really don't need any oiling or anything, and so they come out quite nicely. I will probably later give them a little bit of a sharpening, which will help next year when we need to get into the hard earth in the spring. I should mention these ones are really good trowels. I've had lots of trowels over the years. Some of them, when you're trying to dig down and you're really into some solid dirt, they'll actually bend right here. Both of these I've had close to 20 years, and as you can see, they are still in like new condition. So I'm really fond of these. I usually try and tie some bright colored ribbon around here so that when I put them down in the garden, I can find them. Now it's pretty well worn off, so in the spring I'm going to have to put some new ribbon on them. Okay, I'm going to put these on a towel. And some of the other things that I just have to wash off. This is a fairly new tool that I've gotten. It's a sod cutter. Now, it's not because I need to cut sod, it's because I need to do things like divide my Siberian iris and my hostas, which are tough. And so this one I've got to clean it off a little bit and dry it as well. So, put it on here. I keep old towels. I have a dog. We use them on her paws and for lots of other things. I don't think I've ever thrown out a towel in my life just because of that. This is a great tool for weeding, and it's getting dirty in here. So I'm just going to give it magic eraser treatment. Personally, I think that all garden tools should have fluorescent handles because no matter how hard I try, I put them down, my garden is very full, I can't find them again, and I waste hours trying to find tools in the garden. So that's my theory. Nobody has listened to me yet, at least not done it. Sometimes they make them bright colored, and that helps, but they really should be brighter than that. Okay, that one's pretty good. Now, a lot of us have clippers that we like, different styles. Sometimes we have really good pruners. We have large clippers like this. This one, in fact, I abused quite badly this year. I forgot it in the garden for a period of about a week, and so it needs a little bit of rust removal, and it probably needs to be sharpened too. Yes, it does. So let me first of all show you some of these. This one I've actually worked on quite a bit. I have some tools here. I've been a fan of Lee Valley for a long time. Unfortunately, they don't pay me for my my recommendations of them, but something that they had this year I hadn't seen before are these hand blocks. And there's a set you can buy. There's fine, medium, and coarse. And I'm finding them really good for doing basic cleanup of garden tools. This is the coarse one. So you just, fairly lightly rub it along, and let me find one that's in worse shape than this, because this one I've been working on. So this one, you can see there's a fair amount of discoloration, and there's probably sap from different plants that I've been clipping during the summer. Just plain dirt. Okay. So you can see how it's taking off a lot of that. And the same on this pair. This pair is actually a little dirtier maybe. Now I also have steel wool. You could try steel wool for this. That will work. If you have a real problem, say you've left your clippers in the garden and forgotten them for a week or more and they are now terribly rusty, there's a couple of things that you can do. I'm not going to actually demonstrate them because there are some good videos out there about how to do it. You can use a combination of water, vinegar, and salt, and that requires that you actually soak your tools for 12 to 24 hours before getting them out, and that will actually completely remove the rust if you've got a heavy layer of rust. You can also use a baking soda and water paste, quite a thick paste, apply it to your tool and then take it off in about half an hour. If the rust is not as bad, that's probably an easier solution. But if your situation is not as serious, then you can just use steel wool, or this is a coarse steel wool, or one of these hand blocks. Now, I'm also would like to sharpen these a little bit. I have a rasp here, it's also called a file, also from Lee Valley. It has two sides. One side is a diamond cut side, so it's crisscross, and the other side is a finer side, and it's just got markings in one direction. If you're really working at something, you can actually see the metal coming off, and your tools will be much, much sharper in the spring when you use this. So I'm going to sit down. One of the things about using a file is you don't want to be sawing back and forth across it. You want to be working in one way. So, fair amount of pressure. And on pruners, you always have one side that is sharp and another side that is the dull side, that's the thicker side. So it's this side you want to have sharpened. The other side you might want to just clean up a little bit, but you don't actually have to use a sharpener on it. You're trying to get as much as possible the original angle of the blade. I think I'm going to have to put on my glasses in order to see that better. So let's just take a look here. You definitely don't want to be running your finger along it like that, because that would probably mean a trip to get a Band-Aid. I can see on this that there's little burrs that I have gotten over the summer from cutting things I perhaps shouldn't have, or that were much harder than I thought they were. Just clean this up a little bit more. And after I do this, I am going to put it on a piece of paper towel. And there's a couple of different types of oil you can use. Oil is great for protecting your tools in the wintertime. For this sort of tool, a finer tool, I like WD-40. It's quite a light oil, and I'm just going to try and get it in here, particularly around the hinge and right in there. Oh, that makes it much easier already. Just that little bit of oil. The oil will also help take off some of the dirt. Okay, so that one's now in pretty good shape. This one I have not oiled yet, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a coat of oil also, right in around here and here, and give it some paper towel. This one I had cleaned up already and sharpened. I actually like these little clippers very much. I use them a lot. I'm going to use this to try and get a little bit more of this blackness off. Some pruners and clippers you can take apart. I've seen different opinions about doing that. People say you can't get it ever back quite the way it was, and so because that would be me, I don't think I want to do that. But I do want to get them as clean as I can in this area. I should leave that one open probably. Okay, I have more. These ones look like they actually need a little bit of water. They're quite dirty. Use my handy dandy magic eraser here. You never know it was the same pair of clippers by the time I'm done. Now I want to make sure that these are well dried, because the last thing I want to do is promote rust on my clippers. So we're going to do a little bit of sharpening again on this. And it's only this side, not this side. This side doesn't need it. Doesn't need a lot because this is a fairly new pair for me. I am going to give it some WD-40. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that how much more easily that now cuts than it did, or at least moves than it did before. So leave that one open. Okay, I should soak these while we're doing some of the rest of the cleaning. This is my favorite shovel. Used a great deal over the summer, and my hoe. So we're going to let them soak for a few minutes before I clean them up and try and sharpen them as well. See, this one I think I mentioned I had left out in the ground, and that was not a good plan. So it's going to need some bit more work. So I'm going to start on it with the hand block. See if that will take off. Yeah, you can see how the rust is coming off already, which is good. Last thing we want to do is leave it all rusty over the winter. So that's a bit better. Okay, so I want to be sharpening this side where the blade is. If I had a vise, this would be a good thing to use for this. I don't have a vise, so I have to hold it under my arm and hold it firmly, or maybe I can even somehow rest it between my legs. There, I think that might work better. Move that out of the way. I would say that this has had a great deal of use without being sharpened, and it's quite. Oops, I just did what I wasn't supposed to do. You notice I went back and forth? That's not good. That will not sharpen it. It's easy to do though. It's looking better. However, as I say, you can really tell that this is a well-worn pruner clipper. Well, I shouldn't do that. There's great temptation to treat it badly. I think I'm going to use this still rather than 3-in-1 oil and see if that will help clean it up a little bit. Get in here on both sides. It may even need some more. It's pretty stiff. A bit more. And this does look like I could probably, at least in theory, take it apart, but I'm not sure whether I want to do that. Okay, so now you can see it's a lot more lubricated, a lot easier to move. So we'll leave that one here. And I also have this Japanese hand hoe. It's pretty grubby, and it would be a great candidate for rust if I didn't clean it up and get it into a good spot. That's pretty clean. I'm going to dry it. And then we'll give it a little bit of a sharpening too. I didn't actually use it that much this year, but nevertheless it certainly could use some sharpening. Another one where it would be nice if I had a vise, but I don't. That's pretty good. This one I'm going to give some 3-in-1 oil. This is not a stainless steel, and so it is much more likely to rust. I'll give it a good lubricating coat, and then hopefully in the spring it will still be nice and clean and ready to use. So I have several tools that I like for weeding. That's one of them. This is another, and then this is the third. So I have these three. These are probably my favorites. Unfortunately, this type is really hard to find. I bought it at Lee Valley about 10 years ago. I've never seen it since. It's a Dutch hoer, and it just literally just pulls things out. This one is also great. These ones are still available. And I don't think this even needs to be sharpened. It might need a little more cleaning, but this one I need to clean up a bit. And this one has been used and abused for the whole time I've had it. I take it out in the garden a lot and don't always clean it well. You can see that this side's starting to get a little bit better. Just don't want to run my finger along the edge because that wouldn't be a good result at all. I'm going to use my block again and see if I can get off a bit more of this. It's not actually rust, but it's just sort of discoloration and buildup of something. I don't even think it's soil, it's just not good. So it's starting to come. I'm not going to do the whole job today because otherwise we might be here for a long time. But you can see how it is coming cleaner. I'm going to just wipe that off and then use my rasp again to try and clean up the edge. I'm going to have to go back to this one later because it really, I have mistreated it. If you ever see one of these for sale, I would definitely recommend buying them. It's a great tool, just hard to find. Okay, so we're going to leave that one for now. I will oil it because it is also not stainless, and I think it needs a good coat of oil, and that might also help move some of the dirt that is stuck on it. Okay. So how are we doing here? Some things, my hori knife, absolute favorite for working in the garden when you need to dig up a hosta or something tough. It's not bad. It doesn't really need to be cleaned too much. Just get the dirt off it and dry it down. So it's another great tool. Anybody who buys one says, "Oh, where was, why didn't I know about this before?" This is a wonderful tool called a hori knife. It comes with this sheath. I'm going to leave it out for now while it dries down a little bit further. Okay, I think we're going to move on to a couple more. These are Japanese snips. I don't use them all that much. Perhaps if I cleaned them up better, I would use them more. Some people love them. They get not stainless, so they really do have to be oiled before winter, or you're going to have to do a big cleanup in the spring. So I'm going to use my block to clean them. You can see that that's starting to get a little shinier. It's not strong rust, but there is definitely a little bit of rust on this. And they're not very clean inside. So we'll get that one pretty well cleaned up. And I'm going to give it a bit of sharpening. That's going to be better. This I'm going to use WD-40 on. And wipe it off a bit. Oh, that's made an enormous difference. I bet if you compared the two, this is much stiffer than this one. I'm not going to clean both of them now, but just as an example, you can see that just a little bit of care will make it a lot more effective to use. So I'm going to move on to my trowel, or my shovel and my hoe. You see, it is well used. And probably could have done with even a little longer soaking time or a little more elbow grease to clean it up because it is pretty dirty. When I dig my bulbs in, I usually use this rather than trying to dig with a trowel. I like to dig a big hole and then space out all the bulbs within that hole. I just find that a more effective method than digging up many small holes. So that's why it's quite dirty. It's been used a lot lately. So we'll get it all pretty well dried down. And I'm going to see if I can get it a little bit cleaner with my hand block. A little bit. I don't know if it's a huge amount better, but slightly. Okay, and now my rasp. I'm gonna have to get another piece of paper towel. This is, it's got all sorts of loose particles on it, which are mostly rust, I think. Okay, so another tool, it'd be nice if I had a clamp of ice, but I don't. You know, you may not even think that a tool is dull, but then once you start sharpening it, you can actually see how it brightens up. You can tell that you're putting a good edge on it. And I'm sure this will work much better for me next spring when I have to dig things. There's always things in my garden that I decide are not where they want to be or where I want them to be, and I usually need my shovel for that. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now. I'll probably go back to it and get a little bit more. The one thing I should mention is that when you use the rasp from one side, the other side will start to get a little bit of metal rolling over the edge, and you don't really want that. So you want to go over the other edge too, just gently, to get rid of that rollover. Yeah, that feels better. And you can use your finger gently for that. So you don't want to run it along it, or you may regret it. Okay, so that is done pretty well. I'll probably go back to it later and add a little more to it. And then I have my hoe, which is, it needs to be cleaned a little bit more. It's a hoe that I find works well for me. There we go. Okay. Dry it off. And like the shovel, I'm going to give it a little bit more of an edge. Okay. Clean it a little bit, and then get my rasp out. And this is the side I think that you want to be sharpening. This is the beveled edge. And you're trying to work at a fairly strong angle from the bevel to keep it the angle that it was for that. Now I can see that that's much sharper already, and I haven't even done it for very long. Nope. And then I'm getting rid of the rollover. Okay, so that I will leave as well, and if necessary I'll go back after I check it. So that's the majority of my tools, but I wanted to mention a few other things that you need to do before you put everything away for the winter. Gloves. If you're like me, you may have many pairs of gloves. I buy these by the dozen at a big box store. I wash them. I try to take them out of the dryer, out of the washer rather, and not put them in the dryer, just let them dry naturally. But even so, they will only last for probably a couple of years. And then what happens is the fingers start to stick together and they start to lose their coating like this one has. And at that point, you pretty well need to dispose of them. But they will last a couple of years. So clean your gloves up. If you have things like rain barrels, they need to be either brought into a garage or an area like this, or covered up. You need to disconnect them, because if they, and you need to drain them and disconnect them. If the water freezes in them and then thaws and then freezes, you're likely to break the plastic. Now, not all rain barrels are plastic. Some of them are wood, and they're probably okay. Mine are all this type of plastic, and so I have to drain them and bring them in every fall. I also have quite a few ceramic containers, and I love them, but they can't stay out for the winter, or at least they can't stay out without protection. Some people put them on their sides and they cover them up with a plastic bag, and that seems to work. But if you leave them out and it freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws, they will break, they will spall, you'll lose your ceramic containers. I also have a number of other things here. This is my bird bath. Again, ceramic. This I have to bring in before the first frost, because if the water in it freezes, it will break. It'll break right away. Even some of the resin bird baths will do the same, so you really don't want to have that happen. If you have a rain meter, rain gauge, you want to bring that in before the first frost, because if it's got water in it, then it will break. The ice will form and it will just crack it. And these are not easy to find. Okay, we're going to take a little break because I need to replace this water. It's really quite gross. And I wanted to show you one more little trick, one more thing I have done. So let's just stop for now and I'll be back in a minute. My shovel and hoe are also not stainless steel, so they need a good coat of oil. I'm going to rub this around. And this should prevent any rust occurring during the winter time. Get both sides of them. Give it quite a generous amount of oil. There we go. And up in here as well. And when you care for a shovel like this, it should last you a good 20 years, maybe more, maybe generations if you take care of it. There. And I'm going to do the same with this. This is a much smaller head on it. Give it some oil. So in this case, I'm just going to put it onto my paper towel and rub it around. There we go. Okay, those should be good now for the winter, and in the spring I will be getting them out again. Now, another thing that I have here, and you might be looking at this and going, what on earth are those? Well, these are 2-liter pop bottles, and I made these up a number of years ago. And what I do is cut them in half. They need to be cleaned out now, but and then with a skewer, I put little tiny holes. When I'm making up my containers in the spring, my big containers, some of these big pots that are over here, I put one of these into the container, and it acts as a little bit of a drip system. So every time I water, I fill up this this little container in the pot. And so it comes out gradually. You don't want big holes. So, for example, I don't leave this open. This has to be closed. You just want little containers that will very slowly drip the water out. And it helps to make your watering last a little bit longer. It is not a perfect solution. I still haven't found a perfect solution for what to do about containers that dry out way too fast. But this does help. It will usually at least hold a plant for a full 24 hours rather than sometimes it's only half an hour, it seems, half a day anyway. They need to be cleaned, otherwise your holes get clogged and then the water isn't coming out at all. So that is another little trick that I found, probably on something like Pinterest or one of the magazines that I read. Well, I didn't quite get that clean. When you first plant the container, you see these and you think they look a little bit odd, but very quickly the containers fill in and you never notice them. You never even know they were there if you didn't know that you put them in there. So I've actually got quite a few more of these that I need to clean up. This is just a representative sampling of a few that I have. Okay, that's about it. Now that I have said all of this, I'm going to make a confession, which is that there's many years I don't do this. And it's usually because what happens here in Gananoque is all of a sudden winter will come. We've been rushing around trying to get our bulbs in, get all of those other last minute tasks, and suddenly the snow is on the ground. It's darn cold. You don't want to be outside cleaning things in water because you'll freeze. I probably only get it done every second or third year, but it is really a good idea if you do have the time and the energy and can get everything cleaned up for winter, because it will you will appreciate it so much in the spring when you're actually able to use your tools and they don't stick, they aren't rusty, they're clean, and it's a great way to start the gardening season. Thank you for watching. I hope that you've learned something, and hopefully you get an opportunity to use some of the information that I've given you so that you'll be a happy gardener in the spring.